me, Gail. In this segment of information sharing, I'll be briefly discussing our next subject, which is filing status. Now, let's just take a quick look at the Form 1040, United States Individual Income Tax Return. Directly under that banner, you will find the filing status line. As you can see, there are 5 filing statuses. These 5 filing statuses not only affect the tax liability, but also affect many available tax credits. Tax credits are used to reduce the tax liability, which ultimately affects the amount of refund or the balance due on a tax return. So needless to say, we want to make certain that the correct filing status is used for each taxpayer. Let me say right here, your filing status on the tax return is whatever your marital status was on December the 31st of the tax year. 99% of our VITA taxpayers are calendar year taxpayers, meaning their tax year ends on December the 31st. So whatever the taxpayer's marital status is on December the 31st determines their filing status. Once again, there are 5 filing status. There are single, married filing joint, married filing separately, unmarried head of household, and widow or widower with a dependent child. If you would go to publication 4012 to tab B, filing status, page 6B, it contains the filing status, interview tips taxpayers or tax preparers can use to assist you when talking to your taxpayers or to your clients in helping them to make their correct decisions. Now, move through the interview tips step by step. You can't just jump over one, read straight across. Okay, so let me provide you with a few clues. Single means you were not married on the last day of the tax year. You do not have a spouse who died during the tax year or in the previous 2 tax years. And you do not have a qualifying person who lived with you during the tax year. You are considered single. Moving on to married filing jointly. That means that you were married at the end of the tax year. That is December the 31st, and you and your spouse want to file a tax return together or jointly. No problem. You can file married filing joint even if your spouse died in the current year. Married filing separately closely resembles married filing jointly. However, if the taxpayer and the taxpayer's spouse elects to file separately, no problem. They're entitled to do just that. Our unmarried head of household, this one becomes just a little bit trickier. Now, suppose the taxpayer is married but doesn't file a joint return with their spouse because the taxpayer hasn't lived with them or lived with the spouse during the last 6 months of the year. That means the taxpayer is technically filing separately. But suppose once again the taxpayer has a child, a stepchild, or foster child who live with them for more than half the year and whom the taxpayer can claim a dependency exemption, and the taxpayer supports the entire household in excess of 50% for the entire year. In this situation, the taxpayer is entitled to file as unmarried head of household, even though technically the taxpayer is married. Just know that all, not some of the conditions must be met in order to qualify for the unmarried head of household filing status. This information is found on page B-7 in publication 4012. You will need to clarify the taxpayer's situation before selecting this option in the software. But just know that there can only be one head of household per household. By the way, the software that we're using in TaxSlayer Pro Online, tab B, page 1, provides some screenshots of the Form 1040 tax return with tab information to the right, showing which tabs in the publication 4012 you should be going to for clarification. The pages B-4 through B-7 show screenshots of the TaxSlayer Pro Online software, which shows us how to start a return in the software. Study and refer back to those pages often when needed. Our final filing status is widow or widower with a dependent child. So quite naturally, the taxpayer's spouse has died, hence the word widow or widower. The question becomes, in what year did the spouse die? If the taxpayer's spouse died in 2018, the taxpayer files a joint return or a separate tax return that's already been established. However, if the spouse died in any of the 2 previous years and the taxpayer has not remarried by the end of the year, and the taxpayer was entitled to file a joint return with the deceased spouse in the year of death, and the taxpayer paid more than half the cost of keeping up a home for the entire year in which the taxpayer's child, stepchild, not the foster child, lived in the home with the taxpayer all year, and the taxpayer could claim the dependent exemption for that child, then the taxpayer could use this particular filing status, widow or widower with a dependent child. There are a few more exceptions, so read them carefully on page B-6 in the filing status interview tips. Use the decision tree to assist you in walking through the different scenarios. So, we talked a lot about the cost of keeping up a home. This slide shows the worksheet which the taxpayer can use in helping to make that determination. Typically, this chart is given to the taxpayer so that they can take with them or sit down and try to assess whether or not they have furnished over 50% of the cost of keeping up a household. Publication 4012, tab B, is full of really good information. Be sure to peruse there first if you have any questions regarding the filing status. This also contains TaxSlayer screenshots as well. As I mentioned early on, this is not a full-blown class version and should not be relied upon as such. The webinar should be used as a refresher and directs you to the applicable pages in your handy-dandy resource publication of 4012. My only point is to use your resource guides. Thank you for hanging out with me once again through this refresher on filing status. Remember, you can always come back here to brush up, refresh, or to gain a bit more clarity or understanding or resource direction on this topic. See you again real soon.